Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
Appreciation is part of the journey and the price, part of our psychological need. So why would we not want to learn more about that part of the people that we work with so that we can meet them, you know, with in a way that matters most to them? Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello, and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan, and this is my friend and co-host, Danelle.
Hello, everyone.
Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to share a unique revelation I had the other day.
Oh,
I know.
Okay.
Sometimes these happen.
I like when they're your revelations and not
yours.
Zingers coming my way.
Right. Well, this was so interesting because I was interviewing this gentleman in the industry as part of our volunteer leadership as a business. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking about his career. He's a manager and he wants to grow. And so he was asking me for tips and pointers and things. And he said, specifically, I have a 1-year-old daughter.
Oh,
I know. And I feel like I could potentially miss out on some really important milestones, and I don't want to do that. I want to be highly present, both in my role as a future leader in my business and in this industry, as well as in my home. And in that moment when he said that, first of all, I was just so impressed at his candor and vulnerability.
Yes.
Like, thank you.
Exactly.
In fact, I think I said that, like, thank you for sharing that. But then I realized too, I just had never considered it being something that a male would think through. And then I started to wonder, why do I think that? Like, why am I having this revelation over something that every human being probably feels?
So yeah, I mean, he's dealing with work-life balance, the whole bullshit of it all.
He literally asked me, yes. Yes. And I directed him to the podcast. I was like, well, if you really want to know. But the fact that a man was talking to me about the work-life balance problem was just... That's interesting, because I bet if we went back and listened to our episode on work-life balance, I'm sure that we reference it in more of a female light than male. Yes.
Because that is the origin.
Yes.
I mean, work-life balance typically it was kind of coined in the 70s. And it was really around women entering the workplace in droves. And so it was about the struggle and the mommy guilt.
Right.
Well, of course, there's that struggle for males and dads. And so, wow, what an emotionally intelligent man.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too.
And he's in touch with how he's feeling. And I just want you to know, if you're listening, whoever this was, I appreciate, because I think that struggle is real.
It is.
And I think it's going to, and honestly, luckily for families, I think it's something that can be shared. There's going to be more empathy and hopefully more understanding in the workplace on both sides. And I love that, because obviously we've mentioned it many times. We have 2 babies on the way. And, I do hope that the spouses of the 2 amazing women that we have here that are pregnant, is that, they have the support that they need as well.
Yes.
That we're trying so hard to give our 2 moms. Yeah. And so I hope that the dads are getting that support and understanding as well. So I'm glad you shared that, because I would have been shocked by that too.
Yeah, totally shocked, but so good and so healthy for him. And really, for listeners, if you're listening to this and you're a dad, or you're about to have a child, or if you're not a dad and you want to have a child, or you're struggling at all with work-life balance, would love to hear from you and talk about it.
Yeah, because I think work-life balance isn't always related to children.
It's not.
It's not. It's related to a lot of different things, and we don't want to make that, I want to make that very clear. But I like the idea of having more of these conversations to, in that, around those topics, to be more inclusive, to include men. Why do potentially, I don't know that this is true because I'm not a man, but why do men feel like, why are we so blown away that a man would have feelings like that? Yeah.
That's really the question. It's so wild. Okay.
Yeah. We need to figure that out.
We do. And maybe we'll have a guest. Maybe I'll invite him on to talk about it. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. And before we jump into our big topic today, let's hop into a brief advertisement.
As a social media professional at DMA, I'd be in a tough spot if I didn't have a design guide to help me guide when I'm planning content on a weekly basis for my clients. Just last year, we had a revelation that was a total game changer for the social media team at DMA with the invention of our social media design guides. Our team of professional social media marketers and creative designers will work together on your behalf to bring a beautiful guide together to give you a designated color palette, specific fonts, imagery, lighting, and even graphic designs of social media content that will help you grab the attention of eager people on social media. I use it every day in my role and feel equipped and up to the task while representing the brand that I'm leading in the best way possible. This is a great and affordable way for businesses to streamline their flow of social media content and stay on brand. To learn more, contact me, Jordan, at info@dma-solutions.com, and Jesse and I will set up a call to get your social media on the way to success.
Okay, today we're talking about another way leaders can get smarter about themselves and the teams that they lead, And the truth is, we're just getting started learning about what we're talking about today. For ourselves.
Yeah, we decided to have this talk on the front end.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about a book titled The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, which is a sibling of the popular book that people use to navigate love relationships titled The 5 Love Languages.
Yes.
I'm sure listeners have heard of it. It's older. So
yes,
it's been around the block a few times. It's certainly been around the block at my house a couple times. So I was hoping you could elaborate on the difference between the books, Danelle.
Yeah, so the love language book, it's a book and an assessment that describes the 5 ways that people receive and express love in a relationship. Okay. Knowing your partners or even a friend or a child, a love language, it's letting them know yours is that when you're sharing your love languages, you're helping each other both feel loved and appreciated in the way that you like to receive love. Yeah, in this instance, love.
Right, yeah. My husband and I know I mentioned that earlier about it being around the block at my house, and I mean it because we read that book and we took the assessment after it was recommended by our therapist. So, therapy is good. And we discovered so many differences in the way that we were both processing the emotion of love, like receiving it differently and then giving it differently and having completely unrealistic expectations of the other person. So how are we ever going to thrive in that? So it just helps people better connect in a love relationship.
Yes. And so as Queen Bee, Dr. Brene Brown says to us is that language is the thread that connects us. So of course we're going to have different languages for how we accept love as it relates to the first book, and certainly appreciation in the workplace. Yeah. So the first book, the 5 Love Languages, came out in the 90s, early 90s. And then over time, the authors realized that there was a need, as more assessments were taken, there was a need for this type of teaching in the workplace. And so in 2011, they wrote the book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And so instead of the book being rooted in love, like the other assessment and the book was, this version is rooted in helping leaders create healthier workplace cultures by finding ways to make people feel valued. So that's the difference in between the 2 books, is that this is really centered around how someone receives appreciation in the workplace. So I think it came out in 2011, and then there was a new iteration in 2019. So those are the difference between the 2 books.
And just for full disclosure, you and I have taken the assessment and we have the book.
Yes.
But others in our organization have not. And we're discovering the possibilities right now. They want you to take it individually, and then they suggest that you take it as a team.
Right.
We just haven't gotten to that second step.
No, and we decided to go ahead and have this first episode to kind of to tee up this book and assessment on the front end. And then we'll also have an episode in the coming months where we come back and say, okay, here's what we learned as a team. So what we wanted to do is invite you, our listeners, to honestly come on this journey with us. Yeah. And so that's why we're doing this. And before we dive into the 5 languages, I think it's important to note that the authors are at the beginning of the book, they definitely point out the difference between recognition and appreciation,
which I think is important.
Yes. And in a nutshell, employee recognition is about, it improves performance and focuses on what is good for the company. Appreciation, on the other hand, emphasizes what is good for the company and what is good for the person, which and sometimes it means helping the person find a job, another position within the company. It could be a number of things, but it is absolutely, that was kind of an eye opener to me, is that I can kind of see recognition and appreciation as being one and the same, but the way they describe it, I can totally understand, because recognitions are becoming almost these recognition programs, which can easily be scoffed at, because they can almost be to the point of silliness. Like you've been at the company for 30 years and you get a clock. I mean, it was without thought. It's just something that's almost pre-programmed. And so recognition programs have kind of fallen to the wayside. And appreciation is really, if you look at all the studies, and they give you a lot of really great facts and figures in the book and all of the materials that supplement the book, to understand that the number one thing that people want from their jobs, no matter what, it's across the board. I mean, all of these studies is to be appreciated for the work that they do. And so in order for us to be able to do that, we have to accept that people need appreciation in different ways, no different than love.
Like no clock necessary. I mean, I think that's the point.
Correct.
Between recognition and appreciation, recognition, the clock, appreciation, the behavior.
Well, it's making the recognition more personal. That's what appreciation does.
Really.
Yeah, it's personalized.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference.
And it doesn't have to be this big crescendo. Like it's kind of constant, really. So we've both taken the assessment. We've already covered that. I just wanted to point that out because I would like for you to talk about what you've discovered since you've taken the assessment.
It's interesting. What I discovered is I'm not shocked by the results. So when you take first of all, the languages of love from the first book are the same languages in the appreciation book. So those are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and physical touch. And so the goal is to figure out what are your top two. So your primary and secondary languages of appreciation, and then your bottom one, so that you can adequately understand this about yourself, and then ultimately that we can learn as leaders how our teams are wired in this instance, but then also as peers. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, I was not shocked. And so mine are, my top two are acts of service and quality time.
Yeah.
And my last on the list is tangible gifts. Yeah. So I was not shocked by that at all.
Right. Okay.
And it's interesting because I took this particular test 2 years ago, and quality time and acts of service were my top two. They were just flipped. So now acts of service, which makes total sense, especially going through transition, going through this season of life, it makes a lot more sense as to why. And in this instance, they do say in the book that your languages can evolve over time. It just depends on where you are in your seasons and maybe what seat you're sitting on even.
Right.
And so, I'm not surprised by those. So that's what I learned about myself. And how about, what were your results?
So my top two were quality time and what did I tell you it was? It wasn't acts of service, which is I get, because here's the revelation for me. Mine were so completely different than my love languages.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Well, that was a big revelation for me. Like, I don't know. I thought they would be similar, but the quality time is really, really high for me. And then the second, I know the lowest is gifts.
Yes.
Words of affirmation was number two, which is hard for me to remember because for me, that I'm programmed because my husband's primary love language is words of affirmation. So thank you for unloading the dishwasher. Thank you for wiping down the countertop. You did a lovely job. Like those types of things are things I say on the regular. But when it comes to work and appreciation, I just didn't know that about myself. Quality time makes a lot of sense. I usually have a lot of people in my office. Now I know why. Yes. I've been known to complain about it, Now I know
you
why
invited it, but you invite it, but at the same time, you got to get real.
It's not smart. It's just not self-smarter. And so this is a part of the journey, right? And so for me, the revelation, I love the fact that they're the same. And I love the fact that mine are different. Like,
yes.
Wow. Okay. So it really is different. So let's take a little bit of a step back because you touched on this earlier relative to people's need for appreciation. And I think both of us had, along with the revelation of, for you and what you're valuing in this point of time in your life and your career, and for me, that the fact that mine are so different. Why is feeling appreciated at work so important?
I mean, at its core, it's because we want to know, no matter what seat we're sitting in, that the work that we're doing matters. And, without a sense of being valued by managers, leaders, and quite frankly, your peers and colleagues, I mean, we can start to feel unneeded, or like almost like commodities, just to use a term that we use a lot, that we're just cogs in a wheel.
Yeah.
Without this piece, you can feel very just, again, like you're in this robotic sense.
Yeah.
And in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he felt so strongly about people's need for appreciation that he stated this: next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival, which is to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, and to be appreciated. So that book's been around for ages.
Didn't you ask for that for graduation?
I did.
I mean, that little tidbit for our listeners.
Yes, from high school. So
now here you
it's
are.
been a minute.
Here you are reciting it.
I am, because I just think that he's stating, he's acknowledging that highly effective people, appreciation is part of the journey and the price, part of our psychological need. So why would we not want to learn more about that part of the people that we work with, so that we can meet them, with in a way that matters most to them.
Right.
And so I knew about the love languages when plenty of people around here have taken it. And for some reason, the languages of appreciation just hadn't been on the radar.
Right.
And so that's why I'm excited to, and we'll talk a little bit why that is because I think we're a company that does a good job. I want to do a great job. And what I started to realize, and this was a simple ask of the team, I don't know, a year or so ago, I had Hannah on birthdays. I traditionally, prior to the pandemic, had given gift cards.
Yep.
Well, then when we were remote, I started to Venmo people because I wasn't seeing people. And so when we were now back together as teams to celebrate milestones, I said, why don't you just survey everyone and ask them what they want? And I was so taken back with the different answers. So that's why we decided to, I decided as a leader of this company who deeply appreciates the people that work here.
Yes.
I wanted it to be more personalized. And I don't think that we're short on appreciation here.
No.
But the next part of our journey was to do it in a way that really speaks to the individual.
That's right.
And that's why we're inviting you leaders and listeners to be on this journey with us and learn alongside us. So.
Okay, let's dive into the 5 love languages of appreciation, because like we said, they are the same as the love languages, but the definitions in this context are different.
Oh, for sure. Especially physical touch.
Yeah, and we'll save that one for last. last. Okay.
All right. So here's, these, we'll go through the 5 languages, and this is how people who rank these as their, so think about it in terms of it being someone's primary and secondary preference, as well as their least preference. So that's what the context is here. So words of affirmation. When we're giving words of affirmation, we need to be aware that we need to be specific and, most importantly, sincere when we're sharing accolades or accomplishments about people with this as their language of appreciation. And the venue is important. Whether there are many people around or not can make all the difference in the way a person receives this. So what leaders and peers need to be careful of here is coming off as being hollow or generic. So when speaking about this person as their language of appreciation, because it is very important that we are not, and they use the word generic, but I would it can't be canned.
Right.
It's words of affirmation. It has to not just be thank you, but almost an additional for the this is how important that was.
Right.
And I think that that's really what we have to really pay attention to with words of affirmation.
Yeah, this was a big revelation for me because clearly this was my top 2, which was weird because I hate it. Like I know that I hate to say that. Hate.
Yeah,
it's a strong
like,
word.
I was like,
Sorry. I know
whoa.
your face was like, geez, that's rough. I don't hate it. There are specifics, like all these conditions that I wasn't even unaware of until I took this assessment. It's asking me, it's like forcing me to choose. Well, if I have to choose.
You're talking about when you took the assessment.
Yeah, the assessment, you know, like I really had to like think about this area. So I'm not surprised I ranked high on it because this was the one where I was like, this is hard. That like, this is really hard versus these are easy. I don't need a gift. Like,
Yeah.
This was like, oh my God, like, I really don't like public announcements. What I do like is, and we talked about this in a previous episode, my personality type is to help people, enablement, which is to help people cross the finish line. If they'll just tell me, that was really helpful when you blank.
Right.
I don't need like a big ticker tape parade.
Yeah, I think that can be a misconception with this one. And I can see where, knowing you as well as I do, how this could be a bit shocking to you. But you need to also think about it in your leadership role. You need the words of affirmation. It's feedback right now. And you're not going to believe it unless it's sincere.
That's right.
And sometimes coming from me, the sincerity of it is the cold damn truth.
And I love it.
The whole damn truth. Yeah.
Because half the time as a leader, and you guys may feel this, you don't know if people are being honest.
And because sometimes words of affirmation, they're affirming what is you may already know or what you may be doubting. That doesn't always mean it's a bouquet of flowers in terms of word wise. And so I think it's just, I'm not surprised at this, that this was one of your top right now. Now in 2 years, that could be a different. It could be a different scenario of what you're needing. But in this particular chapter, in this particular chapter, yeah, exactly. And we've learned a lot about words of affirmation because through our milestones, and some people like to be acknowledged and appreciated out loud, and some people don't. And so, we have to. And again, we all haven't taken this test, so it will be fascinating to see how it plays out for our organization. But we already know some of this to be true just based on what we've gotten right and what we, and you asked. What we haven't got wrong.
You did the tiny polls.
Yes.
And you asked, how do you feel? And so we've done the notes of appreciation. You brought words of affirmation equals notes of appreciation at DMA. That's part of what we do. Normally, when someone has a milestone here, we all, special people in their lives around the table will say something really nice. Instead of doing that, we pulsed the team. Do you like that? They came back and said, actually, we'd love written notes of appreciation. So I'm guessing when we take the team assessment that we're going to have more people that are like me who don't necessarily need a ticker tape, but they want just, you're really making a difference in my life. And, this is really helpful when you X, Y, Z'd.
Yep.
Again,
it's the sincerity that's most critical when this is someone's primary or secondary, the way that they like to receive information.
That's right.
And quite honestly, if it's their bottom, then a quick thank you's enough. Just a quick acknowledge, because again, we want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take a lot if this is someone last on someone's list.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on, quality time. And I know that this is your top language of appreciation.
like big.
Yes, and it's one of my primaries as well. But I know this to be true. So as your leader, it's more effective for me to serve you as a good listener. To not be distracted, to be totally with you when we're meeting or when we're on the phone. Meaning, I probably shouldn't be also listening to a podcast when we're talking, unless we're listening to it together. But in other words, people that that this is their language of appreciation is to be fully present.
Yes,
and that's the key here. And again, if it's in person, we don't need to come off as being distracted or multitasking when we're trying to show up for these individuals where this is a primary, secondary language.
Right. And so what you said just sums it up for me. I mean, at work, it's different, obviously, than it is at home. But when I'm here, I just, it's just so different for me because at home, my number one language of love is acts of service. So this one was a surprise to me, but it doesn't, when I really think about it, it's really not that surprising. If you really want to show me you love me, just unload the dishwasher. I said that earlier. Like if you want to show me you love me
At home.
Yes, at home.
Because I would like that here too.
And by the way, sideline, take out the trash. But here I'd love to go to have a cocktail with you. It doesn't have to be a cocktail. Like I'd love to go. We do we have karaoke nights. We do
Trivia
nights. Yeah. There's all these different ways, or just pop in my office, which is what I was talking about earlier. I've invited this, and now it's, we're better. But like for a while there, people would be like, you'll just never believe it. And, and 20 minutes later, I'm like looking at my watch and trying to be polite, and I need to get to work and you need to get to work. So let's move on. But I love that time to connect with people on a very personal level. And I'm going to tell you, and I know you know this, I've told you this before, when I've started thinking this way and being real and true to myself about my need for the quality time, it changed my relationships with these humans.
Yep.
And when it changed the relationships, they stayed longer. And you too.
Well, yeah, because I think if you think about it, we're in the business of developing people to be their best, and we've committed to doing that on a personal level and a professional level. Quality time better be something that
our leaders.
that we are, that we're exhibiting as being part of what fills us up. So I'm glad that this is, one of the languages that we both share in common as being our primary and secondary. And I think it's important to me, and I've reflected a lot on this since I retook the assessment. And, I'm in the office less. And at this chapter and season of my life, it's going to become even less, I'm not going to be here as much. And so thinking through that, I'm going to have to get creative about quality time with people
we'll just come to see you.
where that shows up. So if there are people who have quality time, I know what I need to do to find it. But if this shows up as being a language that someone is their primary or secondary, I'm going to have to be very conscious of that when I'm traveling or away.
That's right.
To make sure that I'm showing up for them. I'm checking in with them. I'm sending them text. I'm scheduling some calls with them.
We can meet you for lunch down the road.
Whatever it may be. So it's so helpful to know. I need it clearly because it's one of my primaries, as do you, but we're going to need to be conscious with it, at least in this example, I'm going to need to be conscious of it relative to those team members of ours where this ranks high. So.
Yeah, no, for sure.
All right. So moving on, acts of service. So as people who value acts of service, we should seek permission to serve them and help them their way versus ours. And I think it's critical that we finish what we start with these particular, where acts of service is a primary or secondary, because these people really loathe being left in a lurch on a project, or being even, if they sense that you're giving half-ass effort. And so acts of service not only are people who love being helped, but they also want it done in a way where they can trust you and they know you're going to do it in the best way possible.
Yeah. This is really, when I think about this, and I'm anticipating when our group takes it, this one's going to be high.
Yes.
I want
We're
to see
very
quality
collaborative
time
group.
high, but that's, I think this is going to be a big one. It's the worst when people offer to do something, and I know that's, typically when I hear complaints about things around here, it's like that. It's like, well, I delegated this thing, or I taught this person transfer of knowledge to this person, offered them this opportunity to work on this thing. And then it just went silent, just nothing, and so did we forget? Did we ignore? Did we decide that we weren't going to do it and follow through? And then we talk through that.
Yeah, I think, I think that's a decent example. It's definitely a reality of ours around here for sure.
Yeah.
But I think when you're thinking of acts of service as being a way someone is appreciated, when we know that that is someone's primary or secondary, we have to understand that for them to be in, to feel appreciated, that offering them a hand sometimes and not doing it begrudge, like doing it half-assed, like we said earlier, that it's important that we're sincere also with, I want to help you.
I want to.
I want it. And I think it's interesting because this is one of my primaries. And I think about it because, and I'm like, why is that? And when I think about my role, it's because I am looking to you and the leaders of this company to step in and do, quite frankly. And so I value that right now.
Yes.
Extremely.
The trust.
And I love to see the enthusiasm of you all stepping in and quote unquote help.
Yeah.
It's we don't need to get tangled up in those semantics, right? But at the end of the day, I feel that this is my language of appreciation. That when I see you do it, and when I know it's sincere, it fills my tank.
Yeah, it's like you probably receive it. I hope sometimes you receive it as "I got you, girl." Like we got.
That's
this,
totally
girl.
how that's exactly how I feel it. And I think that's why it ranked high for me. But when we see members of our team having this as a primary and secondary, I think it signals to us as leaders, we need to really help these individuals. As a leader, we need to know how to help them. And again, as I stated at the beginning, it's on there. What does help look like? So that's a conversation that we need to have.
Yes.
Specifically, what does help look like for you? And seek to understand and have them define it so that we're not guessing. Because my definition of being helped is probably different than someone else's.
That's right.
And in fact, I know that it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important step when it comes to acts of service. So the fourth one is tangible gifts.
Which we don't want to belittle, but.
No. I mean, it's the bottom of both of ours.
But
and by the way, if you look at the overall statistics in the workplace, this is the least one. Wow. In fact, I was just talking to someone the other day, and I think they had about 25 or 30 people on their team to go through this exercise, and only one person had a primary of gifts. Wow. Yeah, tangible gifts. And so that is interesting. I can't wait to see.
I know.
Because we're a company that gives gifts. We give a lot of appreciation in different ways and recognition as well. We try not to do it in the cheesy way, but it'll be interesting to see the tangible gifts.
Because this is something that I love giving gifts.
Me too.
There's a difference, right?
Right.
Receiving and giving. You and I both love to give. And so we just recently had a DMA merch day where our DMA marketing team had all this merch prepared for our merchandise, branded merchandise prepared for our team. And so after reading this part in the book and taking the test, I was like, oh no, because the thing that it says is it can't be stuff we all get. So it can't be swag. Like people who
yeah, like you get a company coffee mug and call it a day, you're gonna fall short with folks who
back to your point. It's just a thing,
right? And
instead of a thoughtful thing.
It's interesting too, and I've learned this through the years about myself relative to gifts. I prefer to give them, but I'm not like you are. Like you're really good at the calendar moments of giving gifts. Like you thoughtfully think about it, but I am less of when I get put on the spot, I'm not as good. Like it has to be something that's just in that moment. I'm thinking about that person, or I'm in their environment and I see, I think of them. I'm like, wow, it would be cool.
It's experiential, really.
And so that's the type of gift giver I am. And so it will be interesting to see how our team ranks here, because I think we can be a lot more personable. We're trying to get better, but I think this is going to help us understand a lot more too. And so anyway, I think that this isn't going to be an interesting, but back to my point, and now I'm just remembering what I wanted to say. Yeah. That memory of ours, is that this traditionally in the workplace is one of the lowest.
So we can expect it and all of our listeners can just by default expect it to be low.
Yes. Okay. But that doesn't mean we're going to quit giving gifts.
No. And I should say the book does say that this does not include money. So talking about raises or bonuses, they take that out. Like you can just say that everybody, it doesn't matter their appreciation. They receive that as appreciation. Gifts does not equate to increased rate, like salaries or bonuses.
No,
it doesn't.
Right. It's a good point to make.
Okay.
Glad you made that. Okay. And so for the final one, this will be a fun one, physical touch.
Yeah.
So we can certainly understand how that could be part of the love language. And I love what the author said, and I invite you to please read this chapter of the book, because what they found it to be, they were going to actually leave it completely out. But what they did through their research, and as more and more people took the assessment relative to the workplace, they did find a few scenarios where physical touch was acceptable. I appreciate it when someone gives me a firm handshake.
Okay.
I appreciate the occasional from someone that I trust, pat on the back for doing a good job. And I'm gonna enforce I'm gonna highlight on the back. I think that this is very much it needs to be considerate.
Yes.
And then they also found where people would say, when I've had a personal struggle or personal tragedy, I appreciate a hug from someone that I trust in my workplace. So there are instances where physical touch in the workplace is acceptable, but it has to be handled very carefully. And so I would encourage you to read the book, because they go on in that particular chapter to talk about the fine line that these few examples, where there could be an acceptable exchange of physical touch relative to, the line of where it crosses over into a harassing situation.
Right. And I'm assuming everyone who's listening to this either owns or works for a company. More than likely there's a policy on this.
Or even if you belong to a group.
So
So
there's just a policy on this that how to navigate that, or you'll find out how to navigate that.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, I am not expecting for physical touch to be at the top of anyone's list here.
No, not at all. No,
So
I don't think so.
Okay.
And again, I think it probably comes down to, again, in the workplace, and you can just tell when you take the assessment, there's not a lot of questions that even
go there.
Address this particular. So
They don't.
Anyway, that's the fifth one. They decided to keep it in. They do a very good job of explaining why in the chapter in the book. And I'm going to let the authors take it from here.
That's right. That's a good move. All right. So the assessment and the books are not free, obviously. A lot of times we'll recommend some free stuff, but they are very affordable. I think the book is like $7.
I don't remember.
It's not it's under $10.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that cheap.
Super.
Okay.
And we've got some links for you in the show notes to the one. I found one that was like $7.50. And then if you want to upgrade your assessment,
Which we recommend.
So when you get the book, there'll be an assessment in there,
A code.
for free. You can take that assessment, but if you want to go deeper, there's a bigger, I can't remember
It's
what
$10.
it's called. Yeah.
It's just a deeper, results.
A deeper dive.
Yeah, deeper dive. Yeah.
Yeah, into you. And so Danelle and I both did that, and it was great.
And we're going to do that for our team. We're going to buy the books. It'll come with the code. They'll take the assessment, and then we will purchase the more thoughtful PDF that gives them a lot more detailed information. Because again, I think this is critically important that we know as leaders how people feel appreciated. But what we're going to do is we're going to spend time from a peer perspective.
Okay.
I want each of us to understand also as peers, and just quite frankly, good human beings, about each other, as no different than this being a personality assessment or all the other things that we invest in. I think this is just another additional aspect of how we can personalize the experience here, so that we're showing up for people.
Yes.
And people are showing up for us in a way that makes us feel valued.
Here's the great news about the assessment and the book. They are affordable.
Yeah.
And so we've got the links in the show notes. I've specifically picked links that go to very affordable options for you. We'll also include links to the 5 love languages. So there's both in there if you want to check both of those out. But the point is super affordable, nimble, easy to comprehend. Test takes about 20 minutes to take. No time at all.
No time. No,
It's not like the Enneagram.
No,
that
not
takes
at all.
40 minutes.
No,
So
no.
you'll get through it pretty quickly, and the book is an easy read. So highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's transition to music because we love it.
Okay.
Today we have a mix.
Yeah,
We're shaking it up a little.
Well, this is a stretch as a music quote unquote music moment, but I've just been personally moved. Oh. So I saw this week, I was in Savannah last week, and I went to go see Where the Crawdads Sing. Mm-hmm. And again, that's when I say, so we're actually going to talk about a movie, but I will say we could tie this in as a music moment because Taylor Swift, sings the score.
Nice.
Anywho,
nice twist.
I have not been on the bandwagon. I know this is a best-selling book. I know it's been on Reese Witherspoon's list, Oprah's list, you name it. And so I know a lot of people in my life have read this book. I didn't read it. And quite honestly, I knew that there was a movie made about it, but I had not really, I hadn't connected with how special the story is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
I haven't seen it.
So I went to go see it with my aunts, and I just didn't have any expectations. And I have to say, and again, I know there's camps. There's two camps.
Okay.
People that have read the book and
Right.
saw the movie and are disappointed for whatever the reasons
They have
are.
like a stink about it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And so then there's the rest of us loved both for their different reasons, or those like me who just saw the movie. And the movie is literally a cinematography masterpiece and an ode to this particular part of the country, the marshes of, the southern part of the United States. And what's interesting is I saw this movie, and my aunts, their house is the back of their house is on a marsh.
Okay.
And
there's alligators in there.
Yes, I do. And it's beautiful. And I've always appreciated, sitting out on their back porch. We eat dinner with the back window. And I thought it was beautiful. I take long walks along the marshes, but I don't know. I just had never thought deeply about them in this movie. And I know the book does a much deeper dive, but the movie does such a visual ode to this particular part of the world that I had not thought much about. And I was so touched by it. And then it's just a killer story. And then I love an underdog movie. So I think the movie, I don't know, I can't remember the budget exactly, but it was like $26 million on an opening weekend. I think it was like 19 million opening weekend. So by all standards, it's a hit. And what I also love is I only recognized one actor in the movie. Now, some of you may recognize the lead actress. In fact, Mackie, my daughter, did recognize her from another part, but I hadn't seen that movie. But I love the story, and it's a thriller without there being too much angst in it. But it's a beautifully told story, and the author, she's set in her 70s when she wrote. She was a marine biologist, cared about nature her whole life, and in her 70s wrote this book.
Wow.
And so it's, again, and the story's not about her life or anything. So it's
just cool.
It's nonfiction, but it's just a beautiful, well done. And I love to learn that Reese Witherspoon's production company is the one that brought it to life, and her team. And I don't know. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. If you've read the book and you have a different opinion, I'm open to that as well, because believe me, people aren't shy. The more people I talk to about this movie, people are definitely not shy. But I wanted to make this our music/movie moment today.
Love it.
So I was very moved by it.
Well,
clearly.
we're gonna go see it this weekend as a family.
You should.
Yeah.
I think it is for teens and above, and there's a lot of great lessons in it.
Okay.
Yeah, I highly encourage
Looking
Mackie
forward
and
to it.
her friends to go see it this
go
weekend.
give it a
too.
whirl.
Yeah. All right.
So this has been a good one. Tools are cool. That is what's coming to my mind right now. Tools are cool. More tools makes yourself smarter.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we send you into the week with grateful hearts.
Thanks, everyone. As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcast. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandy Carlisle reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.